Welcome to the Association 100 podcast. The A100 podcast is an extension of our Association 100 bi-monthly newsletter that focuses on best practices, top trends, helpful ideas, and smart strategies and tactics that work in the world of associations. The podcast will feature meaningful conversations with association professionals across the country, taking a deeper dive into trending topics, offering insights that both inform and inspire. Welcome back to the A100 podcast. I'm Colleen Gallagher, and I'm joined by my co-host, Meghan Henning. We've got a really exciting topic and guest today. We first met Keith Krueger, CEO of the Consortium for School Networking, back at ASAE's annual conference last year. And we featured some info that he shared with us around their efforts to research home connectivity's importance for students in an October edition of the A100. The insights that they uncovered revealed both the need to address student equity, digital equity, but also the power of association-led research. So today he's here to talk to us a bit more about some recently released innovation reports that they put out. So Keith, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be here, Colleen. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, absolutely. You are one of our first repeat guests for the A100, so we're excited to have you.
Great.
So let's kind of set the stage before we dive into our specific topic here. Tell our listeners a bit more about the Consortium for School Networking, who you are, and what your core mission is.
Yeah, well, this is our 30th year, and I'm kind of a dinosaur. I've been working with them for 28 years as their executive director and now CEO. And in fact, we're headed to Austin this week for our annual conference, where we'll have what we generically call the chief technology officers of school districts. So these are the folks they and their teams make sure that the internet and technology solutions are available for students and teachers, and the way we communicate with parents. And of course, in the pandemic, they were front and center on the line of kind of thinking about how we do learning. And I think as we move now where most students are back at school, we're also thinking, how does that change now that we largely have a one-to-one environment where all students at school have that? And what happens when students go home, which our research found that actually more bandwidth is used for education outside of school than at school.
Wow.
So that kind of surprised us, and certainly is a wake-up call for policymakers and parents about the importance that students can do their homework from home.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge equity issue in terms of making sure everyone has access.
Yeah. And I know right now this is a podcast, but video is just critical and has changed kind of the requirements. We used to just say, does the student have a device and do they have connectivity? But now it's, what kind of level of connectivity do they have and what kind of device, as well as all the other factors that go into making things a success, because usage and training is critical.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So you guys recently issued the 2023 Global Driving K-12 Innovation Reports. There were kind of two parts, the hurdles and accelerators and the tech enablers. Give me kind of the high level 30,000 foot.
Sure. Yeah, and it's actually a fun piece of work that we started 15 years ago. We started doing it with a higher ed association. And for 10 years, they were the lead and we were the partner. And we took it over 5 years ago and rebranded it. It used to be called the Horizon Report, and we would say, what are the two most important technologies for this year, two for 2 to 3 years, and two for 4 to 5 years. And people would debate. It was quite intense about, something that someone thought was 5 years or more out, where others thought we're here today. So we changed that and reframed it into 3 buckets, and we pick 3 trends in each of those 3 buckets. So the first bucket is the hurdles. And by hurdles, we mean what are we trying to overcome with technology? The second bucket is accelerators. Education isn't in isolation. So what's changing the expectations in the world about what we're trying to do? And third, and only finally, do we look at the technology. We call that tech enablers. And that's one of the big mistakes that tech advocates make, is they start with the technology rather than the hurdles and accelerators. We think that hurdles is the why. What are we trying to solve? So we put this out annually, and we just put out the 2023 trends. And again, it's not intended to be tablets from heaven to tell you the answer. Rather, we see it's a spark for conversation.
One of the things of it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. One of the things, though, that I noticed and really liked was, in the accelerators, you had the learner agency, and it said students can transform from order takers to innovators. And I wanted to just know more about that. I love what that sounds like. And it makes it sound like the education is two-way, is maybe a two-way street, but yeah. I wanted to hear more about that.
Yeah, and I think we find where learning really works and is happening is when that student takes control of their learning and is engaged, and not just being told to memorize some facts, but actually has what we would call agency.
Yes. And do you find that the technology part, the tech enablers can really help that?
I think they can. Students have a great interest in the tools of today, and always and will probably always be more advanced than those of us who are immigrants to that new world. That said, they need to be guided by a teacher and understand how to apply. They may be fabulous at creating TikTok videos, but that doesn't mean that they know how to use technology for learning.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that co-creation between teachers and their students is key.
Yeah, I would agree. I have an 11-year-old, and this year she got a laptop, and watching her work with, Google Documents and Google Chat. When she was homesick, she was still part of the class. And I mean, it's that to me, I guess I'm my own dinosaur. That to me was mind blowing that, that she could still participate, because it's not as if, she wasn't deathly ill, but she needed to stay home, and she really did not miss a lot. They were definitely communicating.
It's a New York Times reporter who was kind of a skeptic about, and had written a lot previously, pre-pandemic, about screen time concerns, of which we should be always concerned. But she said she noticed that her child was during the pandemic, doing remote learning, was up at 6:30 in the morning, and was done with all of her education for the day by 9 or 9:30. And the reporter kind of commented, this amount of work would have taken 6-7 hours at school. Are there ways that we can allow kids to go to be more efficient, but also go deeper and learn more?
Right. That's a good question.
There really ought to be a way that kids who, we can't just teach to the average. What technology should do is allow kids to move faster or slower, depending on what they know, to more personalize and individualize that experience.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a nice way to put it too, that you could either speed up or slow down, because everybody is different.
Yeah.
And learns differently.
We don't just need to have 30 kids all moving along at the same pace when some kids have got it, and they should go faster and deeper. And other kids that need more help, we shouldn't rush beyond until they've mastered it.
Right.
That's so smart, because we talk about personalization in so many facets, especially us in the marketing world. I mean, that's what it's all about. Yes. So why wouldn't we start personalizing where it matters most when you're learning?
Well, and I think personalization, when you go on Amazon, they predict kind of what. So how do we apply those things to make sure that students actually have competency around what had captured the learning?
One of the hurdles you called out was something that I think we hear in every industry in attracting and retaining educators and IT professionals. So how are you looking at that?
Yeah, and it's certainly been in the news about, half of the teachers want to leave the profession. Now this report is done by people in charge of technology,
Okay.
and I think they're sort of saying that is a big problem, and a problem specifically for people leading technology is keeping and retaining the technology folks. It's hard to get them because schools don't pay as much. Mm-hmm. And secondly, once they have some skills and expertise, like let's say dealing with cybersecurity or something like that, they get hired away. So it isn't just a problem of teachers, that these administrators and tech support are also a big shortage.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. You think that like you're working, hard. I come from two teachers, and they would say that they didn't get into it for the money. But when you're talking about technology, there's a lot more open to you than if you're teaching fourth grade math. Yeah. Not to put that down in any capacity, but technology has such a big reach that you would think that maybe those people are not happy with the pay, and they could find something more lucrative. So that it would make that as a big hurdle.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And that was a new one for this year that came onto the list. Digital equity, however, has been on for a number of years, all the way through the pandemic. So that's not. And the other thing is that kind of came up both as a hurdle and as a new technology was about digital ecosystems. The hurdle is designing that. And I think what that's saying is, you don't just want to, things have to fit together. Right. We all buy a lot of technology solutions, and certainly they do in schools. But how, if you have to learn a zillion different logins and all the training that's needed, so how does it fit together, and how do you make that into really a rich digital ecosystem?
That's so important. I just I'm thinking applying it to like home technology, and it's, I've got like a Google thing in one room and Alexa in the other, and it's like these don't talk to each other, and saying, hey, Google to this one, and doesn't do anything. And so obviously that's a much less important use case, but it can totally relate to the importance of having everything work together.
And the other thing we found in terms of these accelerators, or what I would call mega trends, social emotional learning. Now that's something that technology community, as I said, I've been working with CoSN for 28 of its 30 years, and pre-pandemic, you would never have heard sessions at our conference, or we would not be writing about the social emotional learning needs of students and teachers. But I think the pandemic showed that you can't do education without being concerned about that. And so even technology leaders have to think about whether the tools they're providing are creating are addressing people's well-being. That's really what it comes down to. And that, it could be simple solutions, like at the start of a class, having every student indicate, are they a happy face, a neutral face, or a sad face? And that way the teacher knows, first of all, are there individual students that are struggling, that need attention? But if the whole class seems to be unhappy, maybe it's worth taking some class time to find out why.
Yeah.
Definitely. I love that's on this list, because I think so many negatives came out of the pandemic. It was so awful. But I think one thing, silver lining, is this view of everyone as a whole person. I mean, you think in your work life, you were in people's houses basically with Zoom calls and their family walking behind and seeing their pets. And I feel like that's one good thing, is that we have that more holistic view of everyone and their well-being, and they're just who they are as a person now.
Yeah. And, this is the first year that in the tech enablers that artificial intelligence has appeared. It's kind of funny because we of course did the work last fall, finished it by the end of November, and literally a week later, the announcement of ChatGPT, which is generative AI, came out and has been in the front of the news for everyone, but particularly in schools, and particularly the concern that it's caused by teachers and administrators and the public of, will kids cheat, which is a longstanding concern about almost every technology, whether it was the calculator in my era or the World Wide Web as technology started to come, or Google Docs a few years ago. And the natural inclination is to kind of ban these technologies, which of course is a losing battle, because even though if you can ban it on the school network, the student in their pocket or their backpack have a personal device. So how do we thoughtfully use generative AI to say, okay, here's a first draft. What's not accurate about it? What did it miss? What did it get wrong? Or rewrite. But there's also administrative things. Teachers spend a huge amount of time doing lesson plans. Well, with generative AI, you can say, write me, give me a lesson plan for fifth graders on X subject, and it'll be there 30 seconds later. Now, it may not be perfect. It's a first draft. And that's a huge efficiency. Or school districts spend enormous months of time doing school schedules. They can give you, the AI could give you a draft schedule for the fall, and then you can take it to the staff meeting and say, well, what's wrong with? What did it get wrong? What did it forget about or not know?
I hadn't even thought about that. You're so right, because I feel like the only thing I've read was students are going to cheat. And it's been a very one-sided conversation. It hadn't occurred to me all the benefits it could have to teachers and school districts, just as you said.
And even for students, what great writing is doing multiple versions. And it's really hard to get. Often all you get is hand in your final product. But if you say, okay, let's just see what ChatGPT says would be, a 3-page report on whatever topic, and by next week you need to come back and rewrite it and make sure that everything in it is accurate.
Yes, I love that. I would never. I probably would have been thinking, well, they're just going to outlaw it. But you're right. Anything that's outlawed certainly even usually looks
makes it even more appealing.
It's more tempting, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And frankly, they're going to live in a world, and it truly is transformative in the way that, like, coding is done. I mean, the way we taught kids to do coding isn't the way that coding is done in the workplace.
Right.
And won't be in their lifetime. It isn't today.
Right.
So we need to think about how we get asking the right questions of generative AI.
Yeah, that's the thing, is because you can have a conversation with it, and you can, keep going to get to where you want. And I think you hit the nail on the head with, it's a rough draft, but you can take that and the time it takes, because that's what takes the time, is creating those initial ideas and those thoughts and getting out of that blank page.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
because there's nothing scarier than the blank page.
I suspect, being that you're in the communications world, that I think we all know that sometimes it takes a while to get started. So in the workplace, generative AI is going to have a huge impact.
Oh,
huge, for associations. There's just so many things that I don't. Now it's at its very beginning, and it only knows what has been out on the web, and ChatGPT, it has already been eclipsed by other more current things.
Which is
wild. The pace of technology innovation these days is just insane. It just keeps coming.
Right, right. Yeah.
It's very cool though. Well, tell me a little bit more about the untethered broadband and connectivity piece.
Yeah, and broadband has been, of course, on the list of technology for a number of years. But starting last year, what I think we've realized is that students are not wired to the wall. The devices they have at school, and at home, it's Wi-Fi, and that means that it's the devices are different. It's not desktops, and so. That has lots of flexibility for the way, we don't have to have kids sitting in neat rows at a desk. There's a lot more creative ways that it can, and it allows us to take technology, outside into nature to add probes. So there's lots of learning possibilities, but it does mean that we need affordable Wi-Fi where the student is.
Yeah. Yeah. I do love the idea of getting the kids out of the seats. I think especially for kids that have a lot of energy, and it just letting them move, and then they can think better because they're not sitting there, wanting to jump out of their seats.
Right. Exactly.
And I think this is where a lot of the creativity comes in. I have a nephew who is not somebody who enjoys sitting still in his chair. And there was a desk that they brought in where he was like on a bike. I mean, and he would use that. And I thought, that is so genius. So I love where some of this comes up, and it was a technology chair is how they referred to it, because he would put in that he was going to, pedal for 20 minutes and then another kid could get in it. And again, I just think that the technology, back to your point, Colleen, where it's happening so quickly, but it shows up to fix so many different problems, which is amazing.
As long as we design it, I guess one of the questions that I've gotten for many years is, tell me, predict what is the most important technologies. And I think prediction is kind of a false path. Even the people who invented things that were really breakthrough, like Thomas Edison said, the AC current will never be all that useful. Marty Cooper, who invented the cell phone, said it'll never replace landlines. So even the real inventors of big breakthroughs didn't always see initially what the possibilities were. So I don't think our goal is to predict the future. Our job is to invent the future we want, to lay out the vision, to articulate what we're trying to do, and then let the inventors and tinkerers fiddle around with it.
Yeah, that's great.
So you mentioned predictions and how hard they are. And I think the last few years have only made them more difficult. But what do you hope to see from this report now? Having put it out for 15 years now, what are you hoping by this time next year either changes or anything that happens?
I think the most important thing is to spark conversation and say, this is what a group of experts, they're from around the world. About 60% are from North America, but 40% are from the rest of the world, whether ministries of education or NGOs or school systems around the world. And I think it's a great, again, conversation starter to say, these are what the experts say are the three most important hurdles. Are these the hurdles we're seeing in our school or our school district or our community? Are these the tech enablers that really will make a difference? Or is there something different? Because I don't necessarily think that these are the right answers. And somebody might say, oh, I'm much more interested in something else. And I think that that's the kind of debate to have at a school board or a PTA or the cabinet of a school system.
Yeah. Well, Meg and I both have daughters, so I know we love that you're driving these conversations and that this is being put out there. I think it's so important.
Great. Thank you.
Before we let you go today, we like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions here for our guests. So we're going to have a little fun. The first one's very easy. So tell us where you grew up.
I grew up on the east side of St. Paul, Minnesota, where my grandfather built the house that my father was born in. And so they were very tied to the community. And he was a principal of the local school that he went to.
Oh, wow.
That's so great.
That's awesome. My in-laws are in Eagan, Minnesota. So we get out there, but yeah.
My brother lives by there.
Oh, too funny. Small world.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you won the lottery tomorrow, would you still work?
I probably would, because I'm a workaholic and I love what I'm doing. Obviously, I love the area that I'm in. I've been doing it way longer than anyone else. That nobody in the education world, and there are lots of people who have had good runs of 5, 10, 15 years. Nobody is near 30 years.
Yeah, that's very impressive.
And that's because I think it's a different job than what it's constantly changing.
Yes.
Yeah,
it is constantly changing.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. So I don't feel bored by it. And so far,
good.
my board hasn't gotten bored with me.
That's good.
Always a good thing.
Yes.
All right. What's your favorite movie or TV show?
A guilty pleasure that was Dead or, I think it was called Dead or Alive. About the two women who meet each other. And anyway,
Dead to Me. I loved that.
Dead to Me. See, you should never ask me what I've watched, because I can never remember.
It was very funny.
Yes.
That's great. All right. Dogs or cats?
Well, I have a cat, but I'm not sure that I love them all the time. We have Ted. We had both his mother and him. His mother just died. After 15 years, he's coming into his own. He was kind of abused by her.
No, poor thing.
But I do like dogs. So
I'm definitely more of a dog person, but I have lots of friends who have cats, so I've got to be nice to them. So they tell me. All right, our last one. What's something that you missed from the pre-pandemic days?
Let's see. Well, I would like to feel confident going on an airplane without a mask.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, I would agree with that. Although I like that now that I can just wear a mask on every airplane and I don't get a cold, because I used to, like pre-pandemic, I used to get off an airplane and think, oh, now I'm going to have a sinus infection.
Right.
And now I sort of have the freedom to wear the mask, because before it never really occurred to me to do that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Keith, thank you so much for your time today. We really enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you joining us for the A100 podcast.
Great. Thank you.
And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Association 100 podcast, brought to you by the A100 publishing team, powered by Onward and Upward Marketing and Communications. You can subscribe to the Association 100 podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all of your favorite podcast listening apps so you'll never miss out. Or listen via our website at theassociation100.com. Follow us on Twitter at Association100. That's Association100 for all the latest insights and trends impacting the world of associations. Thanks for tuning in.